I want to tell you a story that's been passed down from generation to generation. My father told it to me, so I will tell it to you. You see, in the vast void of the celestial cosmos, we are but a speck of sand in its infinite desert. And it is here, on our speck of sand, this tiny little moon we have named Kenshi, that many untold ages ago, our story begins. Thousands and thousands of years ago, there lived a great and powerful civilization here on Kenshi, known as the Ancients of the First Empire. They look similar to us, but for all we know, compared to us, they were practically gods. They had through science genetically altered themselves to be pure, almost perfect. They had seemingly endless automated factories working tirelessly day and night, creating whatever they needed in life. They had mastered the stars and possessed the ability to travel from planet to planet, but what we primarily know them for is the creation of the skeletons. They're loyal servants that you still see around us to this very day. And for many years, the perfect society prospered here on Kenshi, but unfortunately, as fate has shown us, prosperity doesn't last forever. One sudden day, the First Empire was attacked. By what we don't know, but all we know is that the attack was devastating. In response, the Ancients used their existing knowledge and immense facilities to create a last resort of powerful weapons. Weapons so immense that no one could ever dare to challenge them again. The Behemoths. Giant autonomous skeleton robots, towering into the sky and built with only two purposes: obey and destroy. The perfect servant. Though the war was costly, the Behemoths prevailed in the end, saving the First Empire and their masters. Once their enemy had been eradicated, the Ancients realized another threat now existed: their servants. Should the skeletons and the Behemoths ever turn against them, the Ancients wouldn't stand a chance, and so the Masters took advantage of their unquestioning loyalty and betrayed their servants. They ordered all of the skeletons and all of the Behemoths into a massive pit before they drowned them, encasing them in a massive pool of liquid metal. Frozen in time, trapped forever, the Behemoths and the skeletons were now confined to a graveyard of cold iron, the price of their obedience. But alas, the hubris of the Ancients was their downfall, for as we all know, the gods can never forgive an act of betrayal, and what followed after came to be known as the Chaos Age. We're not sure exactly what transpired or for how many years it lasted, but what we do know is that it was almost the end of the world. Dangerous celestial activities bombarded the planet with cosmic rays. Natural disasters ravaged the lands, and plagues and diseases tore through the population of the First Empire. But that was just the beginning. For what little remained of skeleton servants, a small minority who had stayed hidden despite their master's orders, rebelled in retaliation for the betrayal of their kin. And in the flames of the rebellion, the First Empire crumbled, and humanity was brought to the brink of extinction. What brought the Chaos Age to an end is still a mystery. Some say it was the god Shitrin, some say it was the god Okran, others believe that it was a single remaining behemoth known as Stope, who sacrificed itself to save the entire moon of Kenshi from complete annihilation. Regardless, we went back to living like animals, scavengers, and nomads. Humanity was plunged into the Dark Ages, and we wouldn't see the light again for thousands and thousands of years. Ages later, a skeleton by the name of Catlon decided that the past was the past and chose to forgive mankind for their acts of betrayal. However, he took responsibility himself and decided that in order to redeem himself and his race for the atrocities they committed during the Skeleton Rebellion, he and his followers had to rebuild the glorious prosperity that had once so proudly inhabited our moon. And so it came to be that the Second Empire was established, successfully reuniting mankind and the skeletons in a new age of unification. Catlon and his followers created a safe haven for working, trading, and living, governing the internal politics, keeping order among the citizens, while militant skeleton knights, as well as the Shek, a race of former humans, now genetically augmented by the grace of the ancients, ensured that the peace was kept externally, fending off both pirates and cannibals alike. While initially founded with good intentions, keeping the peace between skeletons and humans proved to be quite the challenge. And as the citizens grew unruly, the empire itself would grow more and more dictatorial. Religions were suppressed, child prisons were implemented, and a sudden violent crackdown on crime resulted in the false imprisonment and brutal killings of many innocent humans. This ushered in an age of famine that pushed the Second Empire to its breaking point. But while the Second Empire was descending into darkness, the birth of another empire would see the light of day. For it was at this time, in response to the religious oppression of the skeletons, that the Phoenix, first of his name, was born in the light of the god Okran. Chosen to be the messenger of God, the Phoenix started a rebellion by freeing the wrongly imprisoned humans and birthed a new religion whose followers would be known as Okranites. Violently zealous, extremely xenophobic, and severely dispositioned against the use of technology and science, the Okranites believed themselves to be the saviors of mankind, destined to rid the worlds of the skeletons, the Sheks, and their oppressive regime. The violent uprising of the Okranites was swift and decisive. In combination with internal power struggles and heated political conflicts, the Second Empire crumbled in the fires of the human rebellion. In place of the Second Empire, a new political system based on the religion of Okran was established, a state that would come to be known as the Holy Nation. In this state, anything that wasn't considered human was outlawed and destined in the name of Okran to be imprisoned, enslaved, or eradicated. Knowing that the days were numbered, Catlon and his followers fled into exile and hid in the darkest corners of the Ashlands, where it is rumored they still live to this very day. Decades later, when Phoenix, the messenger of Okran, laid on his deathbed from old age, he proclaimed that he, through the will of Okran, would be reborn in the next firstborn male, a prophecy of succession that all of his descendants in the Holy Nation still believed to be true. In the following years, when the Holy Nation thrived, gaining massive amount of territory, followers and worshippers, the Sheks, now without a purpose and outlawed from the remains of the former and majestic empire, had been spread across the moon in hundreds of different tribes, wishing nothing but to die a glorious death in battle, a means for them to be granted access to the afterlife, now spent their days at each other's throats, committed to war amongst themselves, constantly struggling for the position of domination. However, this constant and pointless civil war was remedied by a warrior poet, a Shek by the name of Kral, who with his words inspired camaraderie and unity amongst the Sheks, uniting them all under one common goal: the establishment of a society built on the principles of strength, integrity, and consolidation. Kral devoted his entire life to instill in the Sheks that fighting just for the sake of fighting was pointless, and that it was the act of dying for a cause you believed in that was truly glorious, that standing by a principle is what would allow you into the afterlife. Death without purpose was but a life wasted. Unfortunately, though Kral was successful in the massive and difficult task of reunifying the Sheks, and through his efforts the Shek Kingdom was born, he would eventually fall in battle during the creation of this new empire. But even worse, his message was posthumously misinterpreted by the majority of his kin, who quickly fell back into their old ways of warring amongst one another, which they still do to this very day. His words now act as a warped way of life for the majority of the militant Shek, all who will gladly die by his name in combat, though without understanding the meaning behind his aspirations. In this tumultuous time where the rise and fall of the Sheiks took place, another species seemed to suddenly appear out of the blue, the Hives, or Hivers. Where they came from is unknown, whether they had always been, or if they came from a land far away, across the seas, we don't know. However, we do know that while hives are just like most other organic creatures, the queens, the very being that births them, is partly or mostly mechanical, a machine for the sole purpose of breeding. It is rumored that the hives as a race were the result of a long series of vile experiments performed on children within the child prisons under the rule of Catlon, and after the Second Empire crumbled, these experiments were left to themselves and somehow got out. However, these rumors will forever remain as mere speculations. From the remains of a few fallen cities from the Second Empire, in the confines of relative safety outside of the reach of the Holy Nation, arose two new organizations, once again committed to the task of creating a functioning society that could sustain not just humanity, but all other races on Kenshi as well. Where the Ancients and the Skeletons had failed, the United City and the Traders Guild were convinced they both could and would succeed. Built upon the contrasting pillars of freedom and slavery, the United Cities were created with the idea that the common man should be free from tyranny, and only criminals should suffer under the confinements of serfdom and slave labor. A free state for everyone, where capitalism would thrive, law and order would rule, and every person could shape their own destiny. That was the idea, at least. However, a long drought led to a great famine, a famine so terrible it threatened to destroy the United Cities as a whole. In this period, the small amount of food that was brought in by the Traders Guild was taken by the nobles for themselves, leaving the peasants starving. Desperate and with nothing to lose, the peasants rose up in arms, an uprising that came to be known as the Red Rebellion. The clash between the rich and the poor claimed an untold amount of lives, and would eventually see the governing emperor killed as well. Yet the military succeeded in crushing the rebellion, and the survivors were forced into slavery. In the aftermath of the rebellion, the ruthless Emperor Tengu rose to power and became the ruler of the United Cities. He decided to create a cabal of other nobles, imperial lords of highborn status, handpicked by himself, who would help him govern the cities. And not by coincidence, these were all as vicious and cruel as Emperor Tengu himself. Due to the Red Rebellion, the nobles were terrified of the poor rising up in arms again, and because of that, it would quickly turn out that their legal definition of what a free state was, and what actually constituted crime, would be loosely defined, to say the least. Under the rule of Emperor Tengu, one of the biggest crimes you could commit in the United Cities was being poor. If you were starving, unable to feed your family, couldn't pay your rent, were homeless, didn't pay your taxes, or any of the nobles deemed you unfit for living in the cities, a life in the slave camp would most likely be a punishment, as the emperor viewed poverty as a risk of instability and rebellion within the empire. The United Cities, being a so to speak free state, also changed, now only applying to humans and sheiks on some occasions, skeletons, hivers, or anyone with a different set of beliefs, were vividly discriminated against and actively harassed and violated. Anyone speaking out against the rule of Tengu could also be subjected to slavery, and those who were deemed the worst offenders could be sent to Tengu's vault, never to be seen again. The dream of what the United Cities was supposed to have been was turned into a nightmare under Emperor Tengu. His tyrannical aspirations for the expansion of the United Cities saw him planning to invade the prosperous grasslands to enslave the civilians working in the fields. However, decades earlier, the 62nd Phoenix had been born within the Holy Nation, a man who would come to be known as the harshest reincarnation of the Phoenix of all time, a man who relentlessly judged his parents to be purged by the divine flames at the age of 16, who saw the expansion of Emperor Tengu's rule as a threat to the Holy Nation, and because of that, shattered the peace that had lasted for decades by attacking the United Cities. The rich wooden grasslands turned to a bloody battlefield as soldiers of the United Cities and the Holy Nation clashed for domination. In hopes of denying the enemy, the war would see the Holy Nation torch the farmlands and capture the children of the peasants before forcing them into slavery. This war, that still rages to this very day, would leave our beautiful city of past a ruin, your brothers forced into slavery, and our prosperous lands a barren wasteland of wasted precious resources. This is why I have raised you with a sword in your hand, for together you and I will shatter both the Holy Nation and the United Cities, and finally bring peace to our beautiful moon. Hey there, Hazmat here. That concludes of what I consider the general overview of Kenshi's story. However, the game's lore runs much deeper, with plenty of other aspects to look into should you be interested. As always, a big thanks goes out to the Hunters Lounge, specifically the exclusive Johnny Sevens, the exclusive Gitchy Boy, the VIPs Corvo Bearslayer, Derivative, Doug Powell, Gino Lucero, Goose, Hambone, Jim and L. Bob, Corey Peterson, Michael Fornhill, Mortef Minis, Ryan, Slip, Stas B. Aztec, Sunrise Phoenix, TJ Crane, Texas Toast, and the Wizard of Copper, and of course, all the regulars. If you want to support me directly as a content creator, consider signing up for the Hunters Lounge, either on Patreon or here on YouTube. Link is in the description below. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next one.